There's something profoundly strange that happens when you begin to awaken. It's not a transformation the world celebrates. In fact, it's a kind of silent exile. You stop taking the game seriously, begin to see the rules as illusion, and suddenly, without really knowing why, your presence starts to unsettle others. You walk into a room and notice sideways glances, a subtle discomfort in the air, as if your very silence were saying something others don't want to hear. Alan Watts used to say, "You are something the universe does, just as a wave is something the ocean does." And when you realize this, when you no longer need to prove anything or defend your existence, something changes. You become light, yet that lightness weighs on others. Your peace touches something they avoid feeling: emptiness, uncertainty, lack of control. Your freedom becomes a mirror, and the ego cannot stand mirrors. It's curious. You're not trying to irritate anyone. You simply stopped playing a role, but those still living inside the mask feel threatened by anyone who walks without one. And maybe you felt it before, that look that says, "What's wrong with you?" when in truth the wrong thing is being awake in a world still asleep. Tell me in the comments, have you ever felt this kind of discomfort just for being yourself? Chapter 1. The mirror that doesn't justify itself. One of the first signs that you've begun to awaken is when you feel, almost instinctively, that you no longer need to explain yourself. There's no arrogance in that, only a deep recognition. Life needs no justification to be what it is. But the world, so used to the theater of appearances, gets confused. People expect explanations, defenses. Why did you do that? And when the awakened one responds only with silence or a simple no, something in them stirs. Alan Watts said, "Trying to define yourself is like trying to bite your own teeth. It's useless to prove who you are through someone else's eyes." The other's ego, hungry for control, feeds on the exchange of justifications. It judges, compares, measures, and when you refuse to play along, it feels betrayed. Suddenly your silence is seen as arrogance and your calm as coldness. But what really disturbs them is that you no longer defend yourself. You're not at war. Imagine yourself as water before a rock. The rock shouts, demands explanations, tries to stop the river's course, but the water simply flows around it. It doesn't persuade, it doesn't confront, it just keeps moving. That's how the awakened one faces the world's demands, by flowing. For a long time, you spent energy trying to be understood. You tried to explain your spiritual search, justify your silence, translate your new vision of life. But now you realize the only one who really needs to understand is you. Those who truly love you will feel it. Those who don't will project. Try this small exercise. For one day, live without justifying any trivial choice. Don't explain the reason for your clothes, your mood, your pace. Just be. Observe the reactions, both external and internal. You'll realize how the habit of explaining yourself was really a disguised way of asking permission to exist. The true mirror doesn't speak, it only reflects. And awakening is exactly that, becoming a living mirror before which the world sees itself and grows restless. Chapter 2. The ego's tests, prods, provocations, and old wounds. When your peace begins to disturb others, their egos try to test it. It's almost instinctive, an automatic defense reaction toward what they can't understand. They provoke you, poke old wounds, touch on topics they know once pulled you off center. And they don't do it out of hate, but unconsciously, to prove your serenity is just a disguise. Alan Watts said the ego lives by contrasts, that it only feels real in opposition to something. That's why, when it meets someone who doesn't react, it feels threatened, like a fire losing air. So it blows harder. It needs to rekindle drama to feel alive. You've probably experienced it, that coworker who questions your choices with irony, the relative who digs up old memories to see if you're still the same, or the friend who tosses camouflage jokes trying to get a reaction out of you. All of it is the ego asking for confirmation that the old game still exists. But when you don't react, when you simply observe, something extraordinary happens. The provocation dissolves into emptiness. Not because you won, but because there's no battlefield anymore. The war loses meaning. Try this. The next time someone provokes you, don't strike back. Take a deep breath. 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out. Feel your body, the ground, the present moment. Then quietly say to yourself, I don't need to react to be whole. That phrase is an anchor, a reminder that peace is not a response, it's a state. Watts used to joke that you can't bite your own teeth. In the same way, the ego can't prove its control over someone who no longer lives under its rule. And that's exactly what unsettles others. They sense, even without understanding, that something has changed, and maybe that they could change too. But until they're ready, they'll keep testing. So smile at provocations, not mockingly, but with understanding. Because once you see the game, you no longer need to play it. Chapter 3. The Story Factory. Gossip, Labels, and Projections. When you step off the stage of opinions, the world writes a new script for you. It's inevitable. The absence of your voice creates an echo, and the collective ego rushes to fill it with stories. He's changed too much. She's acting strange, distant. They must be going through some phase. Thus are born the social myths, desperate attempts to explain the unexplainable, inner freedom. Alan Watts said, the human mind abhors a vacuum. So when it encounters someone who lives in silence, without self-justification, it turns them into a character. People can't stand not understanding what challenges them, so they invent narratives that comfort them. It's the ego's way of saying, everything's under control, I still understand the world. But the awakened one no longer fits definitions. They've become fluid, like the wind that can't be contained by walls, and it's precisely that fluidity that bothers those who live by labels. Who are you, after all? Not a saint, not a skeptic, not a rebel, just present. And that presence escapes categories. Let them talk. Let them interpret you. Every story they invent about you reveals more about them than about you. When the ego creates, it exposes itself. And true awakening is realizing there's no need to correct the fiction. Practice compassionate silence. When someone says something false about you, just listen. Don't defend, don't attack, don't explain. Feel the weight of words dissolving in the air like smoke that can't find a place to stick. Truth doesn't need to be announced. It stands on its own. You'll see that gossip is, in fact, a disguised cry of fear. Fear of the new, the different, the one who no longer plays the same game. And the more you stay centered, the more time reveals what words can't hide: authenticity. Tell me in the comments, have you ever been misunderstood simply for choosing silence? Sometimes, silence is the language of those who no longer need to prove anything. And for many, that's frightening. Chapter 4. The Invitation Back to the Old Character. There's a dangerous kind of nostalgia that accompanies awakening, others trying to pull you back into the role you've already outgrown. It's as if the world were saying, don't change so much, go back to being the one I understood. But that person no longer exists, and the collective ego, which thrives on repetition, panics before change. Alan Watts said, life is like music. If you try to control it, you lose the rhythm. Indeed, when you awaken, you stop following the predictable beat of expectations. You no longer laugh at the same jokes, join the same discussions, or seek approval in the same places. And those who knew you before feel betrayed, as if your transformation were a personal offense. Your mother might say, you don't tell me anything anymore. An old friend complains, you're not fun anymore. A sibling gets offended, so now you think you're better than us. But what they're really saying is, go back to being the character that made me feel safe. But the awakened can't go back. Even if they wanted to, the old costume no longer fits. Expanded consciousness cannot return to ignorance without feeling the weight of falsehood. So what to do in the face of these subtle pressures? The answer is simple yet powerful: presence and love. There's no need for confrontation or forced distance. Just don't take part in the theater. You can be in the audience, you can love the actors, but you no longer need to step onto the stage. Try the exercise of the 3 loving boundary phrases. I understand how you feel, but that no longer makes sense to me. And still, I love you. These words are not defenses, they are boundaries. They protect your integrity without closing your heart. And here the paradox reveals itself. The less you try to please, the truer you become. The less you perform, the deeper the connection gets. Because the soul doesn't meet through masks, it recognizes itself in the silence between one breath and another. Chapter 5, The Field of Presence That Unsettles. There's something deeply unsettling about serenity, not because it threatens, but because it reveals. The ordinary mind, accustomed to noise, haste, and drama, doesn't know what to do in the silence of someone who simply is. Your calm becomes a mirror, and in that reflection others see what they avoid facing, their own inner restlessness. Alan Watts said, "When you realize there's nothing to do to be what you already are, the mind goes mad, because the ego lives by doing." And that's exactly what happens around the awakened. Your very presence dismantles the anxious rhythm of those still trying to prove their worth. Your stillness exposes their agitation. Your steady gaze reveals the confusion they try to hide. You've probably noticed, people talk more when you stay quiet. They try to fill the space, justify themselves, laugh loudly, ask what you're thinking, as if silence were a threat. But what truly disturbs them isn't you. It's the invisible mirror you've become. Your peaceful state awakens in them the contrast between being and seeming. Awakened presence is like a vibrational field. It doesn't need words to teach, it communicates through what it radiates. And that energy can't be grasped intellectually, it can only be felt. That's why many people distance themselves. Not because they reject you, but because your stillness exposes them. Others curiously come closer. They feel something familiar, a forgotten memory of what they too are. Try this visualization. Sit with your spine straight, breathe deeply, and imagine yourself as a mountain. The winds pass, opinions, judgments, glances, but you remain unmoved, not because you resist, but because you understand. You are both the mountain and the wind. Here lies the final paradox. Your peace is discomfort for some, invitation for others. But in both cases, it is transformation. For consciousness, when awakened in a human being, reverberates. It doesn't need to convince, it simply is, and that alone changes everything. Conclusion: keep being, a light that doesn't ask permission. Awakening is not a trophy, it's a calling. And that calling comes with a price, the discomfort of being different in a world still afraid of silence. But it's precisely that discomfort that purifies the path. You no longer need to prove anything, convince anyone, or feel guilty for having found peace. Because true peace never asks permission to exist. Alan Watts said, "The real miracle is not walking on water, but walking on earth, aware of being alive." That's what the awakened do. They walk. Simply walk, light, attentive, like those who've learned that life is a game, but a game that only makes sense when played with love and detachment. Yes, some will drift away, others will test you, make up stories, try to pull you back, but none of it is personal. They are just echoes of the old world trying to keep its walls standing. You, on the other hand, have learned to move like water, without resistance, without force, simply flowing. Don't dim your light so others can sleep comfortably. Shine, even if that shine irritates some eyes, because the irritation your presence provokes is the prelude to their awakening. Light always disturbs darkness before it illuminates it. Keep being. Walk in silence, with compassion, with humor, and remember, you don't awaken to isolate yourself from the world, but to see it clearly, and perhaps, without saying a word, help it remember itself. If this video resonated with you, leave a comment. Share it with someone who feels the same sense of displacement. And subscribe so that together we can keep expanding this space of consciousness.